will you find God this summer? Maybe across the world. Maybe in a student who needs a mentor. Maybe at your own kitchen table. Maybe right where you already are. Because God meets us. And then God sends us.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Good to see you all today. So, about 30 years ago, I don't know the exact date, but it's close to 30 years ago, I was on a high school mission trip. I wasn't in high school. I know that surprises you. I was leading a high school mission trip with about 50 other people, high school students and volunteer leaders, and we were on a mission trip to the Bahamas. Yeah, I know, I was really suffering. You know, doing what we had to do for God's kingdom in the Bahamas. It turns out we were on this little small island that had been devastated by a hurricane, and the town that we were working in had been hit quite hard. And so while we were there, we were fixing some homes that had been damaged by the hurricane. We did an afternoon soccer camp ministry, sort of like our own version of Vacation Bible School for the students there. And we were painting a church. And it turns out it was a Methodist church. It was Wesley Methodist Church. And it was about to celebrate its 150th anniversary. And so they had been doing some renovations on the church to get it ready for that big celebration. And one of the things was to paint the interior. And so we had brought in tarps and et cetera. And it's high school students, you know what I'm saying? So I am anxious that there is going to be white paint all over all their blue carpet. But they took the task and did so well. We covered everything, all the tarps, brought in some big ladders, and we had to scrape down the walls because 150 years earlier, when they were mixing cement, they didn't have a water source, and so they were using seawater to mix the cement, and that did something to the cement. I don't know the science behind it, but when we scraped the paint off the wall, we were scraping about an inch of material that was coming off with it. So we were taking out buckets and buckets of this salvaged or removed material so that we could salvage the walls. And then we were painting them fresh. The day before, so it was a really small town, and while we were there, the church members all chose to work with us. They joined with us in the scraping and the painting and all those things. In town, when we were working on homes, they were stopping by. As we would be driving through this small town, people would just beep at us and they'd say, "Are you the church from New Jersey?" So it was just like, "Yeah, that's us." Say, we were like rock stars in this small town. It was the neatest thing. But we learned everybody, and each night we would get together as our group and we would share, and the stories are always about the people that we met, the people that were a part of our experience, and it was just this beautiful week together. The day before the final day, all right, so we have one more day coming up when we're going to finish all of our projects. The day before the final day, we learned from the pastor that we ran out of paint. And this wasn't because the high school kids were painting each other or wasting paint, although there probably was some of that too. But what happened was, in estimating how much paint would be needed, what they weren't aware of was that the walls, because we were scraping them to take off the old material, were incredibly dry, 150 years dry. And so it just was like absorbing the paint that we could put on there. And so we were going to stretch and get as much done as we could. So we were painting and painting and painting, and eventually we were painting with dry rollers, and we're just scraping them, willing paint to come out of these rollers to get onto the walls. And then I decided as a leader, we had done enough. It's time to clean up. We'd done the best we could with what we had. There was no more paint. And so I had to do a little damage control. Youth ministry damage control works like this. I told them, hey, you guys did a great job. It's not about what happens at the end. It's about what you did through the work. And you worked so well. You were the hands and feet of Jesus. And we did really well, but we're going to clean up now. And it's the best we could do. So we were wrapping up, and we were just going to clean up that day, and there's no more paint. And there was one high school student who did not like this, and he went, "I'm going for a walk." And he was a big guy who didn't talk a lot, but he said, "I'm going for a walk. Anybody want to go with me?" Now, it was youth ministry 30 years ago, and it was a town where they couldn't get off the island, so I just let people do whatever they wanted. And so this kid went for a walk, and I was okay with it. I didn't work here, so I don't care if I tell you guys that story, because it was none of you weren't the parents, all right? But I just let him go. And so he went for a walk in town, and I didn't know what he did is he went into a local hardware store, and the guys that were with him said that he gave a little speech. He said, "This town and its people and this church and the story of this church changed my life. I'm not leaving that church unfinished." And so he pulled out what money he had in his pocket. He said, "I'm going in, and I'm buying as much paint as I can." And all his friends joined him. They all went into the church and bought as much paint as they could. And me, having given the damage control speech, watched them walking down the street with paint cans in their hand, saying, "We're going to paint tomorrow, Pastor Rick." Actually, they called me Ricky back then. All because that kid was painting alongside some other people in the church who were telling their story to him. He chose a spirit-led act of defiance. God prompted him to step out. So for the last 4 weeks, Pastor James has been walking us through the book of Amos, about how Amos, a shepherd nobody sent for, was sent anyway. And that's exactly where Jesus picks up. Because sent in this series is not a new idea, it is the oldest idea. Because in the same way that God sent Amos into unfamiliar territory to say things nobody wanted to hear, God's been doing that ever since. Sending people, sending Jesus, and now sending us. And so the theme verse for this series is from John chapter 20, verse 21. It's up on the screen. It's only a few words, but it says this: "As the Father has sent me," Jesus speaking, "so I am sending you." That's what this Sent series is about. Not about adding something to your calendar, not about guilt tripping you into going on a mission trip, but doing what you can do with what you have right here and right now. And it's about waking up to what God has already been doing right here and around the world. So in about 11 days, it is 11 days. In 11 days, our team from Hope will leave for Malawi. It's only 11 days away. It's like coming up like out of nowhere. I got to pack. There's 17 of us going on that trip, where some are going on their first mission trip. Others have been on dozens. I've lost count on how many trips I've been on, but I know one thing that I've learned on the countless trips that I've been on. I've learned how to mix cement in at least 6 different ways. I'm not kidding you. There's a nuance to cement mixing. Every country has its own way of doing it. And a few years ago, that became a motto. And the motto was this: it's not how you mix cement, but who you mix cement with. And that really comes back to my paint story, because in that scenario, it wasn't how you paint, it was who you paint with us. And that young man was inspired because of someone who he chose to paint with. And see, that's what shapes a mission team, and that's what shapes a mission trip. That our primary goal when we send a team isn't to deliver resources. It's to understand that mission is not Western charity, but it is participation. Participation in what God is already doing before we even get there. And so those high school students in the Bahamas saw what God was already doing, and they chose to join in. So the other thing I used to do in youth ministry is I used to take students out on exit interviews after they graduated or when they were getting close to graduation. It was kind of my way to I really didn't care what they thought of youth ministry. I was going to do it the way I did it anyway. But I was interested in what they thought about youth ministry. And so I would ask them different questions. And one of the questions I would say is, what was the best thing we ever did in all of our years together in youth ministry? What was the best thing we ever did? And I wanted so desperately to hear, oh, Rick, the messages. What you said just changed my life. Not even once. I wanted to be, you worked so hard putting all those things together, making sure we were safe, even when you let us walk through town in the Bahamas by ourselves. Not even once. They were always inspired by a moment when God showed up. They were always inspired by a 150-year-old church and the history behind it and the people attached to it. I Googled it this morning, and they just celebrated their 175th anniversary just a few years ago. Our paint was a part of that. And so what happens when we go on these trips is we come home with more than we gave. Every single time we come home with more than we gave. I've seen it in my own life for sure. I've seen it in the hundreds of people that we've taken on these trips, that you go to give and God gives back to you. And here's why: because exposure changes perspective. And so in 2 weeks from today, the mission team from Hope will be standing in the church of Seeds of Promise. And we'll be worshiping alongside of a community that will be worshiping Jesus, just like you all do. And there will be a joy that has no explanation apart from Jesus. And something shifts in you. I don't like babies. I'm just not a big baby fan, right? They're just fragile to me, right? Make me nervous. This is a God moment. Just tell you how God moves in things like this. I'm in Seeds of Promise. This isn't part of the first message. This is bonus material because I'm just feeling really good about myself right now. Right? And so I got to tell the story. And so here's what happened, right? It was last year. We're in Seeds of Promise, and I'm standing in the back, and I'm going to take pictures, right? Because I'm kind of like not engaged yet. I'm kind of still jet lagged. Pastor James thinks jet lag's a myth, but I'm feeling that like, and I'm like going, I'm not ready yet, God. I'm not ready. Like, just give me a moment here to get. And God interrupted me. There was this young lady, and she had a baby, and she was trying to do this kids ministry thing, and there was like kids all over, and they're just doing their thing, and I'm kind of like staying away because I don't want to be around the kids because I'm just not a kid person, right? And she's holding this baby, and man, I just felt God tell me, go hold the baby. And I'm like, oh, come on, God. Like, I don't want to hold the baby. And I'm like fighting with God. I'm like going, I'm taking pictures. That's good, right? But whenever I hold the baby, right, I'm saying, can I hold your baby? Yeah, I'm sure. Like, I'm a stranger. Why are you giving me your baby? I'm holding the baby, right? And I'm just doing the thing, right? Just doing this, right? And the kid falls asleep on me, right? And I'm just sitting there doing the thing. And I'm like, I remember doing this back in the day, right? Yeah. And I'm like doing the thing. And I watched her do this incredible kids ministry in front of me. And all I did was just hold the baby. I was like, all right, God, I'm good with this. I'm good with this. So you see, what happens is when you're on these experiences, you stop seeing yourself as the one who came to give, and you realize you're the one receiving. And so here's the truth that we need to all hear, not just those of us going on this trip, that Seeds of Promise isn't waiting on Hope to bring God. God is already there, and Hope is going to stand beside them and be with God together. And so that is something that we will see and experience and learn from that community that will do something to us that no sermon and no book and no podcast can replicate. And there are things that you can only learn by being present, because exposure changes perspective. And then just as quickly as we get there, we'll be flying home. And then we'll arrive home. And being alongside the people at Seeds of Promise for a week will change us. It always does. God will work through them to bring life to us, because exposure changes perspective. And we won't go home the same. That's always my prayer, that we won't go home the same. That we will come back with eyes that see our own community differently. Having a faith that has been stretched, that the work that God is doing in Malawi will be inspiring that will so inspire us that we will want to replicate it in Voorhees and beyond. And so my prayer on every trip is this, that this new perspective will bring with it a question that we can't shake. That we will be asking, what is God doing right here? And what does it look like for me to step into it? And so I think there's a story that I want to share with you that I think speaks right into that idea. It's from Matthew chapter 14. It's Jesus. It's one night on a lake in Galilee, and it says this. Immediately after this, don't worry about the this, that was another story that you can read about yourself in Matthew chapter 14. But Jesus insisted, let's think about that. He insisted. The word is also compelled. Jesus insisted that his disciples get into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake while he sent the people home. After sending them home, he went up to the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen and they were fighting heavy waves. Matthew tells us it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. Jesus came toward them walking on the water. And when the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. And in their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost!" But Jesus spoke to them at once. Don't be afraid. Take courage. I am here. There's a lot happening here. Like I said, the first thing I want you to notice is it starts with the word insisted. Some translations say compelled. That's stronger than it sounds. Insisted is not enough here. Jesus made them get in the boat. Jesus, get this, is deliberately placing them in a situation where they will see God. They don't see it yet, but God does. And God is placing them where he will be. Matthew tells us it's 3 a.m. The disciples have been rowing for hours. These are experienced fishermen. This wasn't their first storm, and yet they're still terrified and they're still worn out. They are exhausted and they are scared. That lets us know how powerful this storm was and how much work and effort these disciples had put into keeping the boat afloat. And then it says, out on the water, they see something moving towards them. They think it's a ghost. It's Jesus walking on the water. And he says 5 words, "Take courage, I am here." And those 5 words are more than just reassurance. In the original language, Jesus uses the name of God and says, "I am." It's the same words God spoke to Moses from the burning bush. Don't be afraid, take courage. I am is here. God is here. In the middle of the storm, in the middle of the disciples' fear, Jesus says, God is here. Now that's great, but get this. Let's watch what Peter does, because we almost get this wrong every time. Sunday school teachers, you've messed it up. We read this story and we think Peter is being impulsive. We think Peter's being reckless. We hear about Peter's just rash behavior, that he leaps before he looks. But that's not what happens at all. Verse 28, then Peter called to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water. Jesus says, yes, come. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water toward Jesus. Peter doesn't leap out of the boat. He asks permission first. He says, Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come. I want to walk on the water. That's not recklessness. That's a disciple asking his rabbi for permission before he takes his next step. We have to understand first century discipleship. When a young man became a disciple, his entire goal in life was to follow his rabbi closely and imitate him completely. The goal was to become like the rabbi. And so these disciples would follow their teachers from town to town. They would follow so closely that the dust that was kicked up by the rabbi's sandals would often settle on them. So when they arrived in the town, they would shake the dust on them from the rabbi. This developed into an ancient blessing for disciples. The blessing was, may you be covered in the dust of your rabbi. May you walk so closely. May you become so much like that the dust of the rabbi settles on you. So not just learning what the rabbi taught, but to go where the rabbi went, to do what the rabbi did, and to become the rabbi, to be the rabbi, to be like the rabbi in every way possible. So when Peter sees Jesus walking on the water, he doesn't think, that's impossible. He thinks, that's my rabbi. I'm supposed to be with him. If he can do it, I can do it. Where he goes, I go. Jesus, tell me to come to you. And so he asks, Jesus says, come on out. And Peter goes over the side and he walks on water. He actually does it. Amen. Wow. But know what Matthew doesn't say, but it's clear? There were 12 people in that boat, and only one walked on water. One saw the opportunity. One understood, I am a disciple. I go where he goes. Call me out. And he walked on the water. We focus on the sinking. I want us to notice that he walked on the water and he stood with Jesus. Now here's what I think that whole scene is showing us. It's what I said a few minutes ago. Jesus was already out there. He was in a place they never expected him to be. Jesus didn't send the disciples into the storm and then wait on shore and hope they would just gut it out, grit it out, and get back on their own. He came to them in the storm. He even insisted that they go out there before they knew he would be there. He was already in the chaos. He was already moving through the very thing they feared, and Peter wasn't stepping into uncharted territory. He was stepping toward where Jesus already was. Isn't that an amen? That changes everything about what it means to follow Jesus. That God doesn't call us to go somewhere God hasn't already been. God calls us to step out into your neighborhoods, into the workplace, into a relationship, into a hard conversation where Jesus is already moving. He's already there. Even if you can't see him, he's already there. And here's where we're landing this ship today. God may or may not be calling you to Malawi. I can tell you're not going with us. There's no tickets left. God may or may not be calling you to Camden, which is just 20 minutes away, or any other place. But I know this, if we are followers of Jesus, you are called to go where Jesus goes. You are called to go where Jesus goes. And wherever that may be, Jesus is already there. Wherever there is for you. Wherever the there is for you, Jesus is already there. With eyes like Peter, if we can choose to have eyes like Peter, we can see the opportunity and ask, I want to walk on water. Let me go. I want to come with you. And it dares us to ask the question, what is God doing around me that I'm not seeing? And what does it look like for me to step into what God is doing right now? And so in your very own neighborhoods, Jesus is there ahead of you. In your workplace, in your school, in your office, Jesus is already there ahead of you. In a relationship that no one else has access to but you, Jesus is there ahead of you. And it requires us to get out of the boat, to go over the side, and to step out and be with Jesus. And so you're there might be a bus stop. You're there might be a grocery store. You're there might be the families at the soccer field or softball field. But imagine how the world around you could be changed if you just simply went over the side and stood near Jesus. If you're brand new to hope or you're new to your faith, I think here's a great next step for you. Don't overthink it, just do it. Show up for Third Tuesday dinner. Let us introduce you to this community of faith. That's a great next step. Or maybe for you, it's to take a Peter challenge, to just look around you, see what God's doing, and step out. Maybe for you, it's finding one person at work or school or in your neighborhood and learning their name and coming alongside them. If you've been here a while, hear me. If you've been following Jesus for years, let me be as direct as possible. We don't get to stay in the boat just because we've been in it longer. Standing still is not following. 11 disciples stood. Peter stepped out. And so it may be for you, the challenge is that your boat is just too comfortable, too familiar, too safe. That you have a faith that has stayed safely inside the walls of the church. And Peter's challenge is to step out into a dangerous space that Jesus already occupies. Hey, June and July are real big months here at Hope. We have a lot going on. We have the Malawi trip, like I said. We have a youth trip headed to Camden in a few weeks. Maybe for your next step is to support our youth ministry trip to Camden. This is what I want to have happen. I would love for Jason to come up to me this week and say, I have too many volunteers. I don't know what to do. Let's give him a real problem. All right? All right? All right? Rick, people just keep saying they want to help. I got nothing for them to do. I would love to have that problem. We have Vacation Bible School. We call it Kids Camp now. Back in my day, it was Vacation Bible School. We have Kids Camp. We have a drama camp in July. What if you showed up, served, and were present with a kid who needs an adult to see them? I know it sounds scary. I told you, I don't hold babies. But Jesus is there ahead of you. Or maybe your next step doesn't involve a registration form or signing up for something like that. Maybe for you, it's your coworker you've been worked alongside for 2 years and you still don't really know them. Maybe it's the uncomfortable conversation with a friend that you've been putting off that you need to have. Or maybe it's connecting with a person on the soccer field or a classmate who sits all alone. Whatever it is, Jesus is there ahead of you. I'm going to invite the band to come up. See, God sends ordinary people into spaces they didn't expect. Spaces where God is already at work and we get invited to join. That's the story that we've been living in this morning, and it all leads here to this table. See, on the same night, get this, on the same night that Jesus said, "This is my body," it's also when he said, "As the Father has sent me, so I send you." That means that the table and the sending have always been connected. See, on the night that Jesus was betrayed and arrested and crucified, he gathered his disciples for dinner. And in the middle of the meal, he told them what it all meant. That he was the plan. That he was God's plan to rescue humanity from sin. And so he took some bread that was on the table and he broke it and he gave it to them and he said, "This represents my body." And then a little later in their dinner hour, he took a cup that was on the table and he said, "This cup, this represents my blood. That I am sacrificed and poured out for each of you." And so the table, this is the center of everything. Not our steps of faith, not our mission trips, not our courage to step out of the boat. Jesus, God wrapped in flesh, becoming our sacrifice so that we could be found and forgiven and freed. And so we come to this table not because we figured out how to follow. We get to come to this table because Jesus went first, before he ever asks us to go anywhere. So wherever you are in this journey, if this is your first step or your 40th step, everyone is invited. So you can come to this table. See, because this table belongs to the sent. And because of Jesus, you are one of them. So a few instructions. The ushers are going to invite you to come forward. Please wait for their instruction, and then there'll be 3 stations. There's one over there, one in the center, and one on my right side. There's also a 4th gluten-free station all the way over against the wall. When everyone has received the elements, I'll lead us in celebrating communion together. And then afterward, the ushers will be passing up buckets so we'll be able to put your empty cups into those. The bread and juice that we serve is non-alcoholic, and as I mentioned, if you need a gluten-free option, it's on the far station. So please wait for the ushers' directions. If you're unable to come forward, you can let one of the ushers know, and we'll be happy to serve you from your seat. So let's celebrate together.